Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge positions or statements. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions or comments to the Facebook stream. Hello and good evening to Facebook, as well as YouTube. So hello and good evening to YouTube. So we love interacting with you every week over there. Let's see. You know me. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And let's see. Who do we have next? We have Jason Richards. Hello and good evening.
Hello and good evening, John. I see you didn't make one of those snazzy lower thirds for me. Oh, you did?
Even
Fantastic.
For you. Even for you.
You're still a prick, but that's okay. I forgive you for it. Jason Richards here, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Coachman, Virginia. Forgiveness has stopped. And member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C. This is how you know it's a live show.
Yes.
Stuff like this happens.
I never forgive betrayal. All right, Joe Martinez. How
Nor
are you
do I
doing
forget
today?
loyalty.
Yes. Great way to segue me. Hello, interwebs. This is Joe Martinez. This week I am from Ezekiel Bates Lodge, no number, in Attleboro, Massachusetts. And great to be here and talk about, things like chivalry and betrayal and loyalty. Let's just get into it. All right.
Fun stuff. You keep joining new lodges, Joe? Is that the thing? Are we gonna?
No, I said I would No, I'm a member of like 9,000 things, so I'm just gonna pick one every week.
I love it.
And introduce it. Yeah,
it's classy. Keep it up. And when you run out,
Indeed.
you have to like join more things. So
we'll join more things. Yeah.
all right. Next up, Juan Sepulveda. Good evening.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 and the brother behind the gentleman'sbrotherhood.com. Good to see you all.
Great seeing you. All right. Next up, we have one Robert Johnson. Hello and good evening.
Wait, his name is
Hey,
Juan too?
everybody. Good evening to you. And this is Robert Johnson, as you can see from the great fancy lower third John put up. I'm from Space Novum Lodge 1183. But if I wanted to be like Joe, I could also say, how about Internet Lodge 9659? There you go.
That was
Joe's
next
a
week.
member there too, though.
That was next week, Robert.
All right. Well, I'll say Internet Lodge this week, and then next week I'll say Ezekiel Bates, and then next we'll just flip flop. We do that.
I'm getting
Let's
you
do
an
that.
accordion dues card wallet for Christmas.
It just flips out.
We'll just trade. We'll trade. It'll be fine.
And the beauty about doing a live show too is sometimes the cat will drag things in. And so look what we found, just hanging out outside, begging for a scrap of food. That's right, Nick Johnson.
Did somebody say swords? I'm here. Let me tell you, it's totally not a Freudian problem. Yeah, Nick Johnson from
Whatever helps you sleep at night.
Let me tell you, Corinthians 67, past master. I'm also I guess since this is the chivalry show, I should. Chivalry show. I'm so glad I practiced that a few times.
Are you a member of CBCS?
No, I'm not. Or am I? Can we even talk about that? I don't know. But I am a past commander of Faribault Commandery number 8, and I'm also the senior knight of Minnesota Council number 34 Knight Masons.
Well, there you go. Excellent. Look at that. We have a very full grid tonight. Before we get into tonight's topic, I want to give a special extra shout out to all the patrons who've been supporting the show. Head on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable if you want to hop in and join our little private Facebook group, interact with us offline between episodes, and talk about really cool, nerdy Masonic stuff. Love to see you there. So, thanks. All right. This week's topic is on Knight Masonry, or not just the Knight Masons, but general chivalric orders. And so tonight we're going to talk about the plethora of knightly or chivalric degrees that exist in Freemasonry. Don't have enough time to cover them all, but we are going to kind of sprinkle through and hit the highlights and go on this whirlwind journey, what it means to introduce the concepts of knighthood into your Freemasonry. And I think no better way could we introduce this topic than with the walking encyclopedia himself, Nick Johnson. So, Nick, can you tell us a little bit about how, like, this whole concept of like knighthood and masonry came together? Because it seems you seem disconnected. And how did this show up?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of the fun problem with this particular style of masonry. And so, chivalric, the way in which we think of masonry, is that we had originally 2 degrees, and then we had 3 degrees to appease those more gentlemanly folks as they joined. And then, as the degrees continued through creativity to grow, we then had further kind of dispensation of all these different theories, so we were grabbing things from Zerubbabel, the legend of Prince Zerubbabel in the Bible, and then we were grabbing things from different chivalry orders that we had. So there was the SMOM, which still exists, which is the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. And so all these things were kind of coalescing, and it's because at the time, 1680, I think it was 1688 was when the Glorious Revolution in England occurred, right? And that's kind of like the first step in where you have both the old guard, the landed people, and then the new guard, the merchants. That was one of the very first times that they were having to interact on a more equal basis, right? And so, when the Grand Lodge in Masonry started to form, it essentially was that first place where people that were merchants were meeting people that were landed gentry or even gentlemen, right? And so that's kind of where this first part occurs. And if you are somebody who's a merchant, and it's very unlikely that you are going to ever gain any of that, that honor, that chivalry, that chivalric concept of title, right? I mean, you just won't in the system that existed. But in Masonry, it did. And the reason is that we had this legend, and it's a lot of different coalescing legends that, a lot of it was coming from this region of Burgundy that a lot of very smart, very classically trained people were coming up with billions of different degrees. I mean, if you ever look at lists of degrees from the time, I mean, it's like the Knights of the Magic and the this and the that and the everything. And, it's like, and so, the biggest point of concept for us in terms of like this legend that it comes from is is from Chevalier Ramsay's oration, right? So Chevalier, my French is terrible right now, but Chevalier Ramsay was actually a Scottish, a learned Scottish man, but he was born the son of a baker, I believe, and he was moving around different parts of Europe, and he got caught up in the Jacobite change, again from that Glorious Revolution, the change in how that worked. So supposedly he was working with the, he was the tutor of Bonnie Prince Charles, who was the, at that time, the pretender to the throne of, under the Stuart House. And, he didn't exactly, it's one of those that he supposedly came up with this, this document that essentially said that Masonry itself is coming in from these ancient orders of chivalry, particularly, all these crusader things, and it would make sense that somebody who is himself a knight stating that Masonry is coming from knighthood, it gives this credence at the time, right?
There's your connection.
Yeah, and the thing
Wait,
is,
isn't that a conflict of interest?
It sort of is, and that's the funny part about this, is that it's one of those that we as Masons, there's a certain level of enlightenment thinking where we're like, must know the history of the thing, for it is the most important thing ever, right? Then you have legendary things, right? Where the legendary and the actual, you'll never know based on recs that occurred at that time what is where and why, right? But we, and I say we, but more our ancient brethren, particularly the ones that were very focused on, like that oration to be a connection. This is, we are connected to past knightly orders, those military orders that were committed themselves to these very specific acts of chivalry. They were, and so that first started. And then you had, another, his name was Baron von Hund, and so he was also a Mason. And there's some historical concern that maybe he was a charlatan. I don't think he was necessarily somebody like that, but he was grabbing all these different chivalrous orders and things like that were going back and forth between France and Germany and the Netherlands, and then back again, and kind of going into this giant circle. Then he kind of grabbed those all together, said that he was talking to people that he can't tell you their names, and started the Rite of Strict Observance. And so that's kind of where this first was organized.
That should have been your first warning. I can't tell you where it came from. Trust me. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the funny thing, too, is that, there's actually a secondary theory of all this, which is that these degrees originated in the ancients' version of all these different degrees, right? So the ancients were very much into excessive amounts of degrees, right? And oftentimes it was for pay, right? I mean, the reason they were doing it is because, it was like, check out this new theatrical production I've come up with, and there you go, right?
Right, which
so
just goes back to the
of
ancients modern split, because they called themselves ancients to sound more ancient, but they were really the newer one because they were innovating.
Right.
Correct.
RJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick, this sounds so much just like the first American MLM.
Like,
are we going to
three
start
guys,
like
Ponzi scheme?
Yeah, you get three guys in, you get a new title.
Yeah.
Well, and
like a
that's-
multi-level
it's
marketing scheme.
Well,
So I was
that's
talking
how
to-
the Scottish. Yeah. Well, and that's how the Scottish Rite actually worked at the time, right? So that's the weird part, is you had these inspectors general, right, that would get these patents, right? Who knows where they're from? Who knows? I mean, whatever. And they would just walk around.
It's
and
like
they'd
United
say, "Hey,
States dollars. They don't matter.
Exactly. They were just like, hey, you know what? I printed this off of my copier, but it's still the same as what I got it from. So let's do this. And
Make degrees
they
go
would
burr.
take a fee, and they would say, well, I don't have access to degrees 7 through 12, but I do have degrees 5 through 6, and I'd be willing to sell you those. I will confer those, right, to you, and essentially they would do it by communication. So they would, communicate these things. So, and it's not necessarily, like nowadays we think of it as like a degrees for pay, right? But at that time, it was more, like a knowledge sharing based on, economic, economic times. These gentlemen were saying, hey, I'd love to see what this Order of Seeker monitor is. Sure, I'll pay whatever it costs to watch this. And so that's kind of where the chivalrous stuff came from.
Aren't all Masonic degrees for pay?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So that's kind of the,
Not a
that's
sermon,
kind of the
just
weird...
a thought.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, the funny part about all this is, it does make a lot of sense why, the chivalrous themes would jump in so quickly into Freemasonry. I mean, we very much parallel these values, right? I mean,
Well, and that's what I was going to get
honest,
into. Yeah, exactly. Because so let's define chivalry, right? So modern definition of chivalry is the combination of qualities that are expected of an ideal knight, especially of courage, honor, courtesy, justice, and a readiness to help the weak. Right? All good things, all noble virtues, all things that we as good Masons should be doing. So instantly, you're already joining a gentleman's order, trying to better yourself, and this concept of knightly virtues are like, hey, that plugs right in, very easy. And consider even at the time, kind of the earliest time frame that these knightly orders are being added in, it was still very far off from actual knighthood. So it still was a little bit of the, I'm not going to use a loaded term, but a cosplaying of this emulation of this previous ideal. That way you could kind of get into it, say, hey, I'm a knight because I could do this, and I'm going to extol these virtues. So one thing, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, John, as we talk about this idea of chivalry, and we're talking about chivalric orders, and so obviously that's where we're going to stick tonight. But I also am just curious that it is interesting that the kind of Western world focused on this idea of chivalry with these virtues that certainly existed before knighthood, and where they may have pulled these things from. And as you read those off, I couldn't help but remember some of the lectures given when I had been present for Demolay events. Also, I just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and I was actually going to chime onto that from a different point of view. And sorry, John, because I know you want to pull out of Rex's book, which is awesome. But I was going to ask Nick, what are your thoughts on, the more I read about Ramsey and von Hund, depending on the author, you get the sense that a lot of the chivalric orders started to get brought into Masonry very quickly because it catered to the aristocracy of the time, right? And if we're still subscribing to that, it was operative Mason guilds, and they started letting in their benefactors and people with lots of money, that it really catered to, people who wore white gloves and, wouldn't touch somebody who, served them food, that kind of thing. And just perpetuate that aristocratic view by offering these chivalric degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I come at it with a kind of an economic argument on this one, and I've been pushing this for a few years now, which is that the very first social network were these kind of orders. So Masonry isn't the only one that has this working class veneer that then has a very wide berth of membership, right? I mean, and so when the Grand Lodge was formed, and even before then, with all the lodges that had existed before then, they were originally these merchants, right? But there were also a number of aristocrats that were joining, and finally by the 1780s,
Right.
The aristocrats were almost fully integrated into the society. So I think your point is exactly right, which is, I think that there was both a desire to create a thematic familiarity for those aristocrats, but also offering, the ability to gain title without actually being given a title, right? So it provides both, an ability to equalize the membership, but it also, allows for, for them to have a familiarity with what they're already seeing. If you're somebody who's landed or beyond.
Yeah, it's
Do you know what
everybody gets a sword
above your station. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
do you know what
if
this sounds like?
Go ahead, Jason.
Go ahead, Jason. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna log off. No, it makes sense. from the standpoint of Freemasonry, especially in the British Isles in the mid 18th century, because at the turn of the 1730s, with the formation of the Premier Grand Lodge of England, but then also the Grand Lodge of Scotland in 1736, Masonry, speculative Masonry in particular, explodes. And where it explodes is the aristocracy and the nobility. Because again, those with money, as John mentioned earlier, were the first gentleman Masons who be listed on the roll books of operative lodges in Scotland starting in the 1600s. And so, yeah, it makes complete sense to me that there's that connection there between the aristocracy and knighthood and chivalric degrees.
And then also, like, why would you, if you're an upper crust of society, why would you want to emulate an operative stonemason? Like, you got some cool knights that we can start emulating. That's much cooler than people who get their hands dirty. We don't get our hands dirty, right? So let's.
And of course, Marie Antoinette, though, she did have, she would play, and she wasn't the only one, but they would all play peasant, right? So that was a very common thing that people would play then. And even now, you'll have very wealthy people that will essentially buy these, small log cabins and then try to,
like the $700 dirty jeans.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's kind
it's of like Undercover Boss
with the wigs.
Just put on a mustache and a wig. Yeah.
I'm out with the common people.
I was just going to say this idea of, bestowing a title on a group of people maybe who don't necessarily have that upper echelon in society to gain this kind of a title. It really reminds me of Masonry seems to have been almost a perfected version of other systems that never got capped off, right? Like original type of things like Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where you would see somebody who is of, Mather's character, who, has some sort of psychic ability that he sells to the upper echelon of society and bestows them some great honor of being, some adept in something, to elevate them psychologically, almost cosplay, like you mentioned earlier, right? In a way that gives them an edge on their peers. And then you see almost the same thing happen in the Theosophical Society, in the 1880s, 90s, and even into the early 20th century with like guys like Leadbeater, who has dreams about who you were in your previous life. You were Joan of Arc, right? So like you're this special person. It moves beyond even titles. It's just really weird to me how the aristocracy needed additional kind of chivalry or honors that are not real but real, like trophies when you play video games. It's really bizarre to me.
Achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
All right, so for the next phase, I wanted to talk a little bit about like this concept of chivalry and how it applies. And so most Southern jurisdiction Scottish Rite Masons will get Rex Hutchins' A Bridge to Light, kind of an abbreviated version of Morals and Dogma, or at least the kind of the walkthrough guide. And in the 28th degree, page 254, he talks a little bit about like why the chivalric degrees start to come in, because there's a lot that gets emulated in there, right? He talks about how the most well-known of the chivalric legends is that of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. King Arthur assembled around him the most virtuous and gallant men. He created them knights and thus devoted them to the causes of the right, the poor, and needy, and honor. His kingdom became paradise on earth, but this idyllic world came tumbling down when the frailty of the flesh prevailed. That is, a knight fell in love with Queen Guinevere, and Arthur's stepbrother greedily and jealously pursued the throne. Right, so even knights have their falling. But in reality, too, the age of knighthood came to an end as a result of man's weakness. Greed, political and religious corruption, and, in general, the loss of the selfless attitude held by knights and demanded by the rules of chivalry. Despite the fate of knighthood, the chivalric ideal has survived as one of the noblest conceptions of the human spirit and provides the support for the ideals of family, unity, moral education, honor and courtesy, all of which Masonry teaches as its duties. Now, the formal process for which you would make a knight, commonly there were 3 levels. Let me skip ahead here. There are 3 levels, and for those who support the show, are very familiar. You have the valet or page, squire, and finally the knight. Special ceremonies accompanied the transition from each stage. Knighthood was always a Christian institution, and in the ceremony, certain parallels existed to the sacraments of the Christian faith. The white clothing and the bath bring to mind baptism, the stroke on the neck and embrace compare to confirmation. As gifts accompanied baptism, so too the person conferring knighthood presented a gift or granted favor to the newly created knight. Prior to actual investiture, the knight-to-be endured fasts and a night of prayer or vigil in the church. Since knighthood originated with professional cavalry warriors, part of the ceremony included arming the newly made knight. A knight received spurs, coat of mail, the cuirass, which is the protective chest armor, the gauntlets, gloves of mail, belt and sword. The sword was two-edged to remind the knight that he must maintain chivalry and justice. The coat of mail, gauntlets, and cuirass were symbolic of the fortress erected against vice. The spurs served to urge the knight onto deeds of honor and virtue. So during the Crusades, groups of knights often banded together for common purposes, such as to protect the travelers to the Holy Land or to reclaim Palestine from the Muslims for the benefit of Christianity. At the end of the Crusades in the Holy Land, the Teutonic Knights carried their crusade to Eastern Europe and conquered Prussia. This expanded their territory and influence. They were permitted by the Pope to engage directly in trading activities despite their previous vows of poverty. The order's expansion and increasing power aroused the hostility of neighboring countries, which joined forces to finally defeat the order. In 1466, a treaty entitled the order to maintain some lands in Prussia, but its Grand Master became a vassal of the Polish king. The complete dissolution of the order began in 1525 when its Grand Master converted to Protestantism and its lands reverted to Poland. Remnants of the order with scattered landholdings existed until 1809, when Napoleon finally divided the lands among other principalities. Okay, so this is a little bit of background about why knighthood, right? Why was this? Why did it evoke all of these different types of virtues and honor and things that align? So now let's really transition from there to talk about like what are the knightly degrees, because I really want to start diving into that. Okay, we know where they came from, we know what it is. Now let's talk about what degrees do we have in there. So who wants to go first? Dealer's choice. Who wants to go? Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Damn. Alrighty. I didn't even get a sword when I joined any of these chivalric orders. I had to buy my own, which is kind of lame. But let's see. I guess we'll start with the Ninth Masons. We'll start with that one since I actually am a member of that one. The other one I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm not a member of, but we can talk about the Order of Knight Masons. And the Order of Knight Masons is one of those chivalric Masonic orders that confer degrees and where your membership ends up dubbing you a Knight Mason. So there are other sorts of knights and chivalric orders besides just Masonic Knights Templar, which we'll get into as well. But Knight Masons started in the UK, and essentially in Ireland, and they're also referred to as the Green Degrees. So these degrees are the conferring of chivalric orders based around a lot of the same things that if you're a Royal Archmason here in the United States, you've kind of heard before. It goes back to the return of the Jewish people from the Babylonian captivity. So you get some of that in Masonic Knights Templar and even in some other chivalric orders. But these Green Degrees focus around that Second Temple in Jerusalem, which many, if you're Masons, you've heard a degree or two about that. So the Grand Council of Knight Masons, again, started in Ireland, and then it kind of spread out into the rest of the UK and other parts of Europe, and then eventually found its way into the United States as an appendant body. So here in the United States, they set up a Grand Council of the United States of America. So this Grand Council creates councils all over the country, and it invites members. It's an invitational only body, and we'll talk about tonight some organizations that are invitational and some that you can join based on certain prerequisites. But here in the United States, the Knight Mason has to be a Royal Archmason, and then you at some point get an invitation. I don't know why I got one, but I ended up getting one a few years ago. And I joined a council here in Virginia called the Rock of Cashel. And they conferred those degrees basically in one, I guess, sort of festival kind of way. But you received all 3 degrees, and then by the time you were done, you were a Knight Mason. And it's separate from the other chivalric orders and treated more, I guess, akin to something like AMD here in the United States. It's definitely part of Masonic Week, so if you travel to the DC area in February, you'll definitely see these gentlemen in their lovely chivalric costumes. Yeah, so that's Knight Masons.
Awesome. Speaking of AMD, let's switch over to Jason. I think you did some research on that.
I did, yeah. So there are 2 particularly chivalric orders within AMD. One is the Red Branch of Erie, and the other is the the Royal Order of the Masonic Knights of the Scarlet Cord. So we'll go with the Red Branch of Erie first. It is an ancient order said to have been established in Ireland, and it was passed down through generations before being ultimately housed within the Allied Masonic degrees. And so in a lot of ways, it's considered kind of the pinnacle of the Allied Masonic degrees. There are a number of degrees embodied within the Red Branch of Erie. There is the Man-at-Arms or Associate Red Branch of Erie, Esquire or Member Red Branch of Erie, Knight or Knight Red Branch of Erie, and those are actually the three degrees where you're actually invested with those degrees and given those lessons. And then there are 3 additional: the Knight Commander, the Knight Grand Cross, and the Knight Supreme Grand Cross. And those ranks are not actually exemplified in AMD today. And so, excuse me, it's of course the American and the English version of the Red Branch of Erie were at odds for a bit, because in England, the member needs to be a 6th degree in the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia before they're actually eligible, whereas you just have to be a member of AMD to receive these degrees within AMD. However, they are something extra, and they are awarded for meritorious service. So that's the Red Branch of Erie. Going down to the Scarlet Cord, it's an appendant body originally stemming from the Order of the Secret Monitor. In America, again, one only needs to be a member of the Allied Masonic degrees to become a member of the Scarlet Cord. It is composed of 6 grades. Grade 1 is the Ostiarte or doorkeeper. Grade 2 are the lectors or readers. Grade 3 is the fellow or healer and exorcist. Grade 4 is the counselor. Grade 5 is the keeper of the hidden secret. And grade 6 is the Prince of Jerusalem. And so they have different they have different constructs that confer each degree. The first 3 grades are conferred in a consistory, whereas the 4th grade is conferred in a council of elders, 5th grade is conferred in a council of the entrusted, and the 6th grade is conferred in a council of princes. And to be eligible for the 4th grade, one must have presided over consistory. So it's almost like a chair degree. To advance to the 5th grade, one must have received the previous 4 grades and be an officer in the Grand Council of AMD for USA. And then to receive the 6th grade, one must have the grade before it and have served as an elected Grand Officer within the American Grand Council of AMD. So not a lot of 5th and 6th grades in the Scarlet Court out there today. Yet.
Yeah, so a little bit interesting, a little bit different setup. All right, next up, we know we have, let's see, Juan is going to give us another little spin-off group of Masonry that is still chivalric. Go ahead, Juan.
So the group that I'm going to talk about is Demolay, the Order of Demolay. And for those of you who may not know what this is a Masonic themed, so to speak, organization that is focused on the youth. Here in the United States, you have a lot of push for lodges to support the Demolay, and for some people look at it as a pathway to join Masonry eventually. This is open to the youth, of course, up to until the age of 21, as you'll see in a little bit. If you look at the logo for the Order Demolay, there's a crown and there's some swords and there's the plume on top of the hat. So you can see the connection there with the Knights Templar as we've come to know them. I personally haven't been a part of Demolay, and I have very little contact with the order. But what I can tell you is that among the degrees that they have one called the degree of Chevalier, and this is the highest honor that an active Demolay can receive. It is one that may be also bestowed upon a senior Demolay, or that's how they refer to some of the older Masons who are part of the group. If you were to go to the Demolay website, you can see that they talk about some of the requirements in order for them to attain this. Among them, they have to be the age of 17 by the day of the annual meeting where they're nominated, and they must have been active for at least 2 years in the order in order to achieve it. There's also some other branch of Demolay that is related to the chivalric degrees, and in this case is the knighthood priories. Knighthood, the Order of Knighthood, is an independent organization of the Order of Demolay, and this is designed especially for active members of the Demolay between the ages of 17 and 21. And under some circumstances, there may be an exception made to accept someone of the age of 16. This is not a merit-based kind of achievement. It's not like the title that we talked about earlier. This is more of an order. You belong to this order, and thereby you are considered one of these knights. The official name of the order is the Chivalric Knights of the Holy Order of the Fellow Soldiers of Jack Demolay. Jack Demolay being the leader of the Knights Templar, as you might have heard already tonight. And finally, what I have about it is that this order made its debut in 1946. It was exemplified before the Grand Council, now known as the International Supreme Council, and I have here that Dad Land, which was the founder of the Demolay, he implemented that knighthood ritual in 1947. So it's very interesting. One parallel that I find with some of the other orders that we talked about and some of the other degrees is that they harken back to some of these chivalric titles. So, for example, members of the knighthood that I'm talking about have they can these are the titles of the officers. Among them, you can find a sacristan, prior, junior deacon, senior deacon. You have a page commander, squire commander, knight commander. So you can see those three titles again: the page, squire, and knight. So all of these also revolving around some of the character traits that we talked about, including courage, courtesy, honor, charity, etc., etc. So pretty cool. I'll let you learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and so Jacques Demolay was actually based on who was actually the real Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And so let's talk about the Knights Templar, because we have heard of them. They're a little bit more mainstream than some of these. Robert.
Yeah, they are pretty much
They're like
mainstream. And what?
They never forget, whether it be loyalty, betrayal, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And if you've seen the History Channel show on the Templars with Mark Hamill and all that, then you already know everything there is to know, and that's it. And you can just move on to the next guy. But no, so what's really interesting about the Knights Templar is this was my personal first foray into any kind of quote unquote chivalric orders, knighthood, that kind of thing. And so I joined the KT probably 2010-ish. And I found it to be really interesting. And as I learned more about the organization, because what's shown in the organization is not exactly what history has to say. As we both know, as everybody knows, Nick Johnson talked about that 1737 oration of Ramsey, and then Templar Masonry in England kind of gets to this new wave toward the end of the 18th century. With they have a conclave that forms their first grand conclave, and the name Thomas Dunkerley, a lot of you probably know from Masonic history. You've seen his name in books. He's the first Grand Master. And then, so continuing with that UK tradition, this is where it sort of stems from. They have really 4 degrees. So these 4 degrees, I should also mention that in Europe, it operates a little bit different than it does here in the States. So here in the States, most of the time, you will complete your Blue Lodge, your symbolic degrees, and then, you'll go into the Royal Arch, which is 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then you can go directly into Knight Templar, like in Illinois. But many times your Holy Royal, your Royal Arch Masons, your RAMs, your Rams, and the council, the cryptic council, are together. So you take both sets of degrees before going into the Knight Templar. I will say, it is really important, I think, if you're going to take Templary seriously, you should check out both the Royal Arch and the Cryptic Council. So once you have those council degrees or those Royal Arch degrees, there are 4 orders that go on top of them. They're like prerequisite. You have to have those before you can get these Templar orders. And the first one is this thing called the Illustrious Order of the Red Cross. And I want to make some stipulations. This has no relation to the Red Cross of Constantine. It's totally different. So I want to throw that out there. So in this degree, it's really similar. You'll recognize, if you're a Scottish Rite Mason, that this is similar to something that you see within the Lodge of Perfection, perhaps. It deals with the Israelites returning to Babylon, to Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple, with that central character of Zerubbabel. Then that next degree is the degree of Knights. The Knight of St. Paul. And sometimes it's called the Mediterranean Pass. And the next degree is called the degree of Knight of Malta, or the Order of Malta. But something that is interesting, and it kind of goes without saying, but it is strictly said, at least in UK Masonry, that this degree, the degree of Knight of St. Paul, is a mandatory prerequisite before moving forward to receive that degree of Malta. So the degree of Malta is also known by several different names. When at my commandery, they just called it the Order of Malta, but it's also called the Order of Malta, the Order of Knights of Malta, the Ancient and Masonic Order of St. John of Jerusalem. It's called the Order of Palestine, the Order of Rhodes. It's called, and of course, the Order of Malta. And then the last one, everybody always just thinks, like, and you're in this Masonic circles or you're talking with people and they're like, oh, they're getting their orders on Saturday. And everybody's like, oh, what are they shipping out? And it's really kind of a militaristic talk. But he's talking about the orders of the temple, which is the degree of the Knight of the Temple, or the degree of Knight Templar. And so it's really interesting. You know, the degree of Knights Templar is really centered around the culmination of that chivalric code to uphold the Christian faith. And I'll say, when you go through those degrees, it really does feel like some sort of a hearkening back of a sorts. It's pretty serious stuff. And just to make sure I dot all my I's and cross all my T's, again, just as a stipulation, I did find these 4 points, and they bear mentioning. In England and Wales, the teachings of the Order of the Red Cross feature the Red Cross of Babylon, which forms part of the Allied Masonic degrees. The Order of the Red Cross is often considered a compressed version of the Red Cross degrees, or green degrees, which make up that Order of Knight Masons. And the other thing was what I already had mentioned, that the Order of Red Cross should not be confused with the Red Cross of Constantine. And the degrees in the United States are, again, very similar. So the same ones, right? The Illustrious Order of the Red Cross, degree of St. Paul of the Mediterranean Pass, Order of the Knights of Malta, or simply Order of Malta, and the Order of the Temple. And of course, the Knight Templar is the organization that most of us try to emulate in Blue Lodge when it comes to things like the Chamber of Reflection, if we're allowed to do so. And of course, the Knights Templar is a real hot topic right now. So if I missed anything, I'm sure y'all will yell at me and let me know about it.
Really? Hadn't heard. Not much going on there.
Are you sure, John?
Yeah, been living under a rock. So yeah, there's some wild stuff going on in Templar land. I wanted to now go to the other side, instead of the York Rite side of Masonry, dive a little bit deeper into the Scottish Rite side of Masonry, because if you go through the degrees, you're going to find a lot, and I mean a lot, of references to Knight degrees and Knight Masonry in the Scottish Rite, regardless of your jurisdiction. So one thing I wanted to share here was, and I'm gonna cheat tonight, I want to go over to Wikipedia, because it has the best description of, so if you head over to Scottish Rite Wikipedia page, the best table of all of the various degrees that you would get in the Southern jurisdiction, Northern jurisdiction, France and Canada, as well as England and Wales. And what the best way to kind of get a snapshot, high-level view of what this all looks like, if you search for the word knight, sure enough, you're going to see over 30 references to knight in the title of the various degrees, regardless of what jurisdiction you're in. And so you have plenty of chances to be a knight of something. So you have the Knight of the East, or the Knight Rose Croix, or a Prussian Knight, or Knight of the Royal Axe, or Knight of the Brazen Serpent, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to plan on spending at least 30 minutes on each one of these. So if you need to use the restroom or pop some popcorn, now's your chance. No, I'm not going to do that. We'd be here until tomorrow. But the takeaway here is, if you go through the degrees, many of them you'll see to be using the knight environment as a MacGuffin to carry through the lessons of the degrees, right? It's not necessarily chivalric in itself until you get up to something like the 28th degree, which now we're seeing, let's look down the bottom here, the 28th degree really starts some of the real chivalric degrees, like the Knight of the Sun, Knight Commander of the Temple, all the way up to Knight Kadosh, where if you're familiar with Templarism and the uniforms and that kind of thing, it's very, very similar. The Knights Kadosh, the 30th degree of Scottish Rite. And so you get a lot of the themes, not only of knighthood, chivalry, all those things about honor and doing what's right and defending the faith. So you get a lot of that in the degrees. So I just want to make sure that people know that if you like your knightly degrees, you're going to get plenty of them in Scottish Rite. Some are there just to serve as an environment, and others are there to actually teach chivalric lessons and more, moral lessons there. Robert?
John, I was just going to say, I'm curious. If you join all these knightly orders, how many nights are you going to be out a week, huh? Huh?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, here's Nick. Nick.
So yeah, just in conclusion, Scottish Rite has a lot of knightly influence. A lot of this came from Albert Pike, especially in his rewriting of the degrees. And actually, there's one thing I did want to show here, which was, here's actually a picture of Albert Pike in the 30th degree or Knight Kadosh original uniform, the uniform that he specified to be used. It's since been adapted over time. It's definitely more black in modern times, but this was at least the knightly garb that he had envisioned for the 30th degree. If you search on the internet, people will say it's Albert Pike in a Knights Templar uniform, and that is not true. This is as he prescribed it to be the 30th degree.
I know we're getting close to wrap up here in final question, but I wanted to get Nick. I got to ask you this, because here's the thing. You see so much layover between all of these different knightly orders, right? The Scottish Rite has degrees which are remarkably similar. I mean, the costumes are the same for the Knights Kadosh and the Knight Templar, which is why people always, they confuse the two. And I keep hearing that, the guy who invents the York Rite in America essentially steals the stuff from the Scottish Rite and spins it into a second system. Can you give me some history on this? What's fact? What's fiction? What do you think?
Well, I think there's going to be a couple of things with that. One is that at the end of the Civil War, so when it was the golden age of fraternity, essentially there was a standardization in the uniforms and everything else and costumes. But you're right. I mean, I do think that there is if you look at what the Knights Templar garb looked like, in terms of how it was devised out in the 1820s, 1830s, it looks surprisingly similar, as you said, to, there's a lot of similarities with those. And I think it's partially because when you have the same people doing the same thing all the time, they're going to, for convenience sake, just kind of do that. And then all of a sudden, when you do it enough times, it becomes standard practice, but that's a good question to dig deeper into. But my guess would be, and this is just looking at different pictures of the costume makers and everything else at that time, and the people that were devising the degrees, there was a lot of standardization, just because you can't memorize all that, you can't do all that all the time and double up on that. So that would be my guess. But and the other thing is with the content that we have with the degrees, and when you look at them, like I said, they're Burgundian. There's a lot of things that came from this very, very wild rural county, or I think it would be a prefect or something like that in France. And it was like a burned over district. And so the degrees that we see now, you'll see a lot of similarities between them, because those elements continue to follow through. So, you'll see a chamber of reflection one place. You'll see skulls in very similar situations. Wherever yeah, exactly. Skulls, the amazing thing. And so that's exactly, and that's what my assumption would be, though, is that a mixture of the elements that came in from France and came here through either our connections through at that time Great Britain, and also Dutch traders. That would be where I would assume all that stuff came from.
Excellent. All right, so in the interest of time, let's start wrapping things up. You do want to wait till the end, because we do have a special announcement, but I wanted to at least start with a special guest. and previous host, Nick Johnson. Any last words on here? I'll make it easy. I'll make an easy question for tonight. Final question is, which one's the best knightly order?
All right, so I'm in Knight Masons. I'm in Holy Royal Arch Knight Templar Priests, Holy Rollers. I'm in Sovereign College. I'm in all those other things. I'm thinking in terms of content. I would say I think the Order of the Temple. So Knights Templar, when you take all that kudzu, right, all that nonsense that has grown over it, marching in columns and looking hilariously garish, right? If you dig deep and go back into those origins and those original things, that would be my my favorite degree. In terms of the most fun, weird, in terms of like symbolism, Holy Royal Arch Knight Templar Priest. So that one is it's the most incredibly strange single degree. It's only a single degree, and supposedly there were 33 of those degrees, and the symbolism there is very Rosicrucian. Color schemes matter. The position in which you are matters. It's a very incredible degree, and it's seen by very few people. Because in that case, there's only 27 members per tabernacle, and you have to have been a past commander to be in it. So it's very rarely seen. So it's also kind of a treat that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Royal Order of Scotland is always just, it's incredible because you're traveling around meeting people from all over the country.
So your favorite degree is 4 of them. Awesome. Great job. Hey, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on, and we appreciate that. It was fun. And I'm surprised I did not see a single sword from you this entire episode. Even Joe found a sword, but...
See, my kids keep finding my swords, and, it's one of those that you got to lock them up. You got to put a lock on them, because you just never know.
All right. Yes, always be safe. Okay, let's go to, let's see, Robert Johnson next up.
Oh, gee, right as I was going to drink something.
Wait, take a sip and go.
Okay. Dude, I'm a member of one, so I have no context to know. I'll say that, well, actually, right, so I guess I'm a prince of the royal secret, or a master of the royal secret, so that's a knighted thing. I think Knights Kadosh is really fun, really cool. I like the messaging. I love the lecture there. So I'm going to go with that. Again, I don't have a whole lot of experience with knightly orders at all, aside from being knighted those 2 times, right? Once within the Knight Templar degree system, and then again in the Scottish Rite. So that's what I'm going with. Right. And then I'm going to share my screen really quick because I want to show you guys this thing that's happening. Where is it? There it is. So we've got a really cool, unique Masonic education opportunity coming up. The Scottish Rite Valley of Washington, D.C., together with the Masonic Legacy Society, got together, and we're going to have a webinar where we're going to talk with Brother Richard Dreyfuss, 32nd degree. And he's going to talk about civics and the responsibilities there. And so you'll see more information coming out on this as the weeks lead up to this, but it'll be on September 17th, and you will need to register. So to register, just go to tinyurl.com/AASR Dreyfuss, like Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite Dreyfuss, and you can register to go to this really cool webinar, a civics conversation with Brother Richard Dreyfuss. I think it's going to be really fun, and you guys will have a lot of fun watching and checking it out.
Excellent. All right. Now let's go over to Jason Richards.
That's not him.
There you are.
Ha! Here's that guy. I am at present, nor have I ever been a member of any chivalric orders.
So that's your favorite.
I mean, it's not a statement. I just haven't joined a lot of appendant bodies, and so I've kept it to Royal Arch and AMD.
So, new question. Does this change your perception? Which one are you interested in the most now, knowing this wealth of information?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I'd like to start off with either Knight Masons or something within the AMD.
All right. Good answer. All right. Thank you, Jason. Let's see. Let's go to Juan Sepulveda.
Ask me the question again, please.
Actually, I'll let you think about that, because I think I skipped over Joe. We're gonna go with Joe next. Sorry about that. Joe, what's
Yes.
you've been waiting there, holding that sword the whole time.
It just fits well there. Yeah,
favorite
I remember your
Knight
question.
debate.
Yes. So of the few that I've seen and participated in, I'm gonna have to say the Order of the Temple. It really is, when properly done, it can be one of the most profound initiatic experiences that someone can receive. And I think that, again, I really emphasize the properly done thing, because there's so much choreography to it, and there's so much ritual that really is supposed to drive the point home of what it is you're doing that day when you receive that order. So if it's done well, it could be really, as profound as a raising, which for a lot of people, that's kind of the apex of their Masonic experience. And when it's done well and it's done profoundly, it can change your life. So what happens after that, that's completely up to your individual commandery or group, but for me, yeah, definitely Order of the Temple, game changer. And they have skulls. So, that's my bag. So I dig it. I have nothing to plug. So yeah, great to be with y'all.
Excellent. All right, thank you. All right, Juan, what is the best Masonry degree, or at least your favorite?
Well, of course, I have 2 children, and I never pick a favorite. So
Smart man.
I will not describe as my favorite, but one degree that I enjoyed thoroughly. I was in very good company. It was a very memorable moment. It was whenever I was accepted into Olivet Commandery number 4, and I became a Knights Templar. So that Knights Templar degree in Commandery was of significant impact to me. So I have fond memories of it, and I hold other titles in my Masonic career and in life. And I wanted to express my gratitude to Nick for coming tonight and being a part of this. What a better person than the sword expert and a wealth of knowledge. I always learn a lot whenever you're with us. So I miss you, of course, and I appreciate you coming back. And he holds an additional Knight's title. In this case, he is Knights Emeritus of the Masonic Roundtable. And earlier in the chat, I mentioned that we had an announcement. Well, we have a couple of announcements. We have a very good one, and the other one is good too, but it has its baggage. So I will be holding that title that Nick is holding right now. I will be Knight Emeritus, effectively October 1st. So my last day in the Masonic Roundtable will be September the 30th, where we will be celebrating the episode number 357. So I look forward to you joining us that night, where we're going to spend some time talking about the significance of those various steps in Masonry. So if you have a glass, I wanted to raise a glass to the past, present, and future knights of the Masonic Roundtable. May its path be illuminated as always, and for us to continue seeking more light together. I love you, brothers. I thank you so much for the last 7 years and 350 plus episodes. It's been the ride of a lifetime, but it is time for me to move on to other endeavors. So I drink to you, to your health, your prosperity, and your continued wisdom. Salud.
Salute.
Roast.
Well, that is bittersweet, and a very hard thing to follow. But yeah, Juan let us know this week, and we're taken a little bit by surprise, as all of these are. But again, with Juan, where his head is at. He's always has a vision in mind, and I think that's certainly respectable for him to go off and take the next thing. And of course, we'll call him back on when we need his expertise. So
John.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot.
Uh-huh.
Can you bring us back up? All of us, please.
All of us.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe. I'm leaving the show, but I can't be more happy that you are the man that is one of our newest members. It's bittersweet to me that I know I'm going to miss a lot of awesome interactions and cool stuff, but I'm super happy that you're with us. I want brothers to know very clearly that the coincidence of your arrival and my departure has
so you are not leaving.
No,
because of
And
this guy.
we're not the same person. So
that's true. You've seen us together in the same room, so there's a hint.
It's all special effects.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that we were clear about that, brother. I love you, I admire you tremendously, and I want to make sure that brothers know that the reason for me leaving is that I have to focus more of my time and my energy in my business, the Gentleman's Brotherhood. So my shameless plug, of course, if you derived any benefit from anything that I've shared in the past 7 years, please do me a favor. Come on over and invite all worthy gentlemen to be a part of the Gentleman's Brotherhood. Just go to thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com. We have some really cool stuff coming right up, so I don't want you to miss it. Thank you so much again.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Juan, for everything that you've done over the past 7 years. And we'll have a couple weeks left of your time to really send you a good send-off. But again, it's bittersweet as always. So yeah, don't want to get choked up on the air. But let's transition to the final question for me. Favorite knightly degrees in Masonry. I'm going to say that the Order of the Temple as well, for me, was very profound. And yet, if you want quantity over quality, head on over to the Scottish Rite, where you can get all the knight degrees, to collect them all and really get that experience. So, yeah, it really depends on your flavor. So I think that we've had a lot of good background, a lot of good research. We wanted to keep it high level tonight, but at least give you a sampling, a tasting of all that's out there. And there's plenty more. Trust us. We had to actually cut off a few in the interest of time. With that, big announcement right now. We saved it to the very end. Of course, you'll hear more about it over the next 2 weeks. In 2 weeks from today, as we're doing this live on September 2nd, 2 weeks from today, September 16th, will be Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol, a Masonically inspired novel, has now been adapted to the big screen, or at least your personal screen at home, where that will be adapted as a miniseries on NBC's Peacock. So, as a bonus series of videos, the folks on the Masonic Roundtable have decided that we want to now spend an extra bonus time with all of you and dive deeper into the found symbol. So what you will see is on Thursday nights after TMR, you will have an additional series of videos that you can watch at your leisure, breaking down and deconstructing and analyzing all of the Masonic secrets, illusions, symbols hidden in the new Dan Brown series. We want you to go on this journey with us, and I think it'll be a great experience to really dive deep and look at what we can provide as the future of Freemasonry and how it applies to pop culture including the newest round of pop culture, the Masonic the Dan
And-
Brown's lost symbol. And
Are we going to be doing it live? Is it going to be live after? Like,
we can do it live.
wait,
Absolutely,
are we doing
it's
it
gonna
live
be
right after the show?
We're gonna do it live.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it live.
It'll be really fun.
The same day the episode drops.
Exactly. So it will
Yeah.
be within 24 hours of the actual show. So yeah,
Definitely spoiler alerts before every episode. And just like y'all watched, The Talking Dead after the Walking Dead episode, that's what we're doing. It's going to be tight. You guys are going to love it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to nerd out so hard.
it's going to be a lot of
Great.
fun. It really is.
Yep.
Yes. Again, we talked about like what would be a great way to do this. We want to, since the episodes are going to drop on Thursdays, might as well go for it. Do a live interactive like talk show approach to all the things we find. And so, what a better way to introduce you and your friends to Freemasonry than through Dan Brown's newest miniseries. We'll see that in 2 weeks, so stay tuned. It will be on this channel, so make sure you subscribe, like, follow, bell, do all that cool stuff now so that you won't miss any of the new episodes as we drop them. Thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.